It is crunch time here in Canada, ladies and gentlemen. The election is nearing its final days. Obviously, Monday being the extraordinary day, we'll be going live at 7 o'clock for the election results on this channel here, just to let people know. But there is a lot of tension going around that even after the advanced polling, even after they said about 70 million Canadians have already gone out and cast their ballots, things are not looking good in the Carleton riding, which is very famous for Pierre Poilievre in his riding, because there is infighting within this riding to keep Poilievre afoot. So CTV News says Elections Canada mangling long ballot with 90 candidates challenging Poilievre. Or sorry, Elections Canada managing long ballot with 90 candidates challenging Poilievre. So Pierre Poilievre, unlike all the other ridings, which have maybe 5, 6 other candidates, they have 90 in this riding. I didn't even think this was possible. I thought they would have had some sort of limitation on how many candidates in one particular riding that they would have. Now, why exactly in this riding? Well, because Pierre Poilievre is a majority favorite among the younger demographic compared to Mark Carney for the older demographic. And they revere Pierre Poilievre as a threat to the establishment, as a threat to the status quo, as a threat to the Liberal and NDP establishment. So they allowed 90 candidates in this one single riding. Elections Canada, let me make this a bit bigger for folks to see. Elections Canada says has measures in place to help people vote in the Ontario riding where Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is being challenged by 90 other candidates on the ballot. Poilievre is in a tight race against Liberal candidate Bruce Fanjoy, who has been waging an intense ground battle in the riding. But a protest group called the Longest Ballot Committee has convinced dozens of other candidates to register to run as independents in Poilievre's Ottawa area Carleton riding, in addition to the usual main party candidates. The protest group opposes the first past the post voting system and is seeking to build support for electoral reform. Now, I agree with that. I agree that there needs to be electoral reform. I agree 100%. Concerning the fact that we saw, even with the debate, that the People's Party was not allowed in attendance, the Green Party was not allowed in attendance, and they're refusing candidates to even represent in these ridings. They're disbarring candidates to go in this riding. There's protests right now to kick out, two of the top tier conservatives, Andrew Lawton and Aaron Gunn. They're doing unjust lawfare against those two to get them out of their ridings because they're the most popular right now. Same with this. They're worried that Pierre Poilievre is going to steal this riding, and now they have to have other candidates to try to stop and mix up the votes. It has yielded long lists of candidates in prominent federal by-elections in recent years, inflating the physical size of ballots and delaying the counts. Elections Canada says it's on its website that the ballot for the Carleton electoral district in this general election looks different than usual. It says the ballot is larger and has 2 columns with candidate names. 2 columns. I mean, I don't have words to say for this. I really don't have words to say this. That, say what you want. Again, I'm not dissing people to say that independents cannot run in a riding. I'm not saying that. But to have 90 candidates, particularly in this one riding, in this one national riding, where it happens to be Pierre Poilievre's riding, seems a bit suspicious. It doesn't even seem, it is suspicious. It's exactly what they intended to do. They intended to flood this riding with as many candidates as possible, splitting up the votes in the hopes that Pierre Poilievre not not only doesn't win the election, but also loses his riding. A two-column ballot was also used, the website used, during the by-election in the electoral district of LaSalle Emerald Verdun in 2024, where there were also 91 candidates running in the riding. Elections Canada says a large print list of candidates will be available on election day and that a braille template has been modified to fit the two-column ballots. My God. To maintain the integrity and security of the ballot, the agency says poll workers will be trained in a new method of folding the large ballots so as to maintain the secrecy of the votes. My God, they're going to need like 3 people to fold that. It'd be like folding bed sheets. Like, holy crap. Can you imagine that? Trying to fit that into a box? Which, by the way, for people outside of Canada, we still have paper ballots, so that's at least a good thing. We're not like the United States where an 11-year-old can hack a machine. It also says the unusual form and size of the ballot requires that experienced election officers be assigned to polling stations. The website says the ballot adapted for the purposes of the election is of an unusual size and an estimate that a ballot box will hold approximately 100 of those ballots. Consequently, several ballot boxes will have to be made available at the polling stations to allow for the receipt of all ballots marked by electors, the website says. Poilievre is seeking re-election in his own riding against dozens of other candidates, while Liberal leader Mark Carney is running for the first time. Again, Mark Carney hasn't been in this country in 10 years, kicked out the previous Liberal MP, and stole his riding. So now he's running in the first time. First time in Canadian politics, he's actually running. While Liberal leader Mark Carney is running for the first time against just 4 challengers in Nepean. Again, you can tell how suspicious this is. You can tell easily how suspicious this is. Here's the Globe and Mail. Even the Globe and Mail did a write-up, and Globe and Mail is usually kind of more leaning towards Mark Carney because obviously Globe and Mail is aligned itself with the Century Institute, which Mark Carney ran. You know, that nefarious organization that compromises the security and sovereignty of the nation by saying we need to overload our population by 100 million people. You know, how great they are. The Globe and Mail is a part of that. So they say conservatives deploy volunteers in bid to save Poilievre's riding. Internal polling shows leader at risk of losing a seat he's held since 2004. The Liberal rival, sources say. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is at a risk of losing his Ottawa area riding as the party scrambles to send in volunteers to save the seat he has held since 2004. 2 federal and 2 provincial conservative sources say. With several polls showing the Liberals poised to win the election, the loss of Mr. Poilievre's Carleton riding would make it difficult for him to hang on to the federal party leadership post. Party headquarters has, for the past 2 weeks, been sending workers to Mr. Poilievre's riding, including experienced campaigners who would normally be assigned to tight races across the country, the 4 sources told the Globe and Mail. Globe is not identifying the conservative sources, 2 of them, blah, blah, blah. They say that Poilievre's conservatives are also deploying troops from the party's Ottawa War Room to conservative-held ridings and sign in the final days of the campaign that the party may be poised to lose seats to the Mark Carney-led Liberals. It is standard practice in the final week of the campaign for the War Room staff to be sent out to ridings that are either vulnerable or have the chance of an upset victory. Just how crazy this is. I mean, we've already seen the tactics that the Liberal Party has done to their own people, to their own constituents, to their own people running in leadership race. Look at what happened to Ruby Dalla. Look at what happened to I'm blanking on the name. The guy that Mark Carney stole his riding from. Uh no. Ara? Anyway, you'll find in chats. Mark Carney stole his riding. They kicked out Ruby Dalla. Those are people inside the Liberal Party, and now they purposely got an organization to get 90 people in this one riding so that they could steal the votes away from Pierre Poilievre. This is all intentional. This is not an accident. This is not, oh, we just magically have all these candidates that want to run this specific riding. Just a coincidence. No, it's all purposely done. This is all purposely done. And no one's saying a word about this. No one is angered at this. CBC isn't doing a crackdown on this. It's just, they say it's healthy democracy. It's healthy democracy that we have 90 candidates on a ballot that people can't even fold and put into a box at this point of how large it is. So here's Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party. He says, it's over. Poilievre won't be the next prime minister. He may even lose his seat. He bunged a 20-point lead because he was unable to differentiate himself from Carney, a truly conservative alternate. Now you have an important decision to make that will determine if we have a true conservative, libertarian, and populist rival in Canada in the coming years or not. You can either waste your vote on the fake conservative losers who are going to spend the coming years debating if they should be moving even more to the left to win next time, with Doug Ford as their next leader. Oh, God. Oh, God. Of course they would go for someone like Doug Ford. Doug Ford is a freaking sellout. Doug Ford, the progressive conservative, is a giant sellout. Of course they're going to pick someone like him compared to Pierre Poilievre. And even though Pierre Poilievre is a bit of a sellout also, because that's the price to pay to be in politics in this country, Pierre Poilievre is way immensely better than Doug Ford on everything, on a lot of different things. Or you can contribute to making sure that the PPC, the People's Party of Canada, survives this election, and there's over the next 4 years to continue to push the Overton window in the right direction with its perfect common sense platform. Imagine how disastrous Canadian politics would be if the PPC just fades away. The polls give us only 1 to 2%. Can we get more than that? So, again, that's also why they're doing this. And just like what we reported when Carney took over for Justin Trudeau, that the whole reason for this is because they want to dismantle populism in this country, meaning that they want to go against the majority of Canadians. So to think that Donald Trump is going to take over this country is minuscule to the already destructive, elaborate scheme that has already took over this country. The erosion of Canada has already been happening for many years, and this is in plain sight because now they're doing nefarious tactics that are anti-democratic to stop Pierre Poilievre from winning his seat and possibly winning the election. This is all in plain sight, ladies and gentlemen. This is not hard to figure out. And yet, CTV, CBC, Global News, City News, all the media outlets are not going to speculate this. They're not going to raise eyebrows and attention to this. They're not going to investigate. They're not going to go after Mark Carney for this. They're going to allow it to happen because they're also against the idea of populism rising in this country. Populism is like the new dirty word, which all it means is that you go for the majority of people. So here's Kyle Kemper. This is Justin Trudeau's brother-in-law, by the way, who was interviewed on Tucker Carlson and many other platforms. He says, IMO, greatest crisis Canada faces is Carney and his central bank backers. The CBDC, that's the central bank digital currency, is their goal, and Mark is their man. I don't think Pierre is at risk of losing his seat, and you're actually amplifying the bias of the mainstream subsidized media that is so ardently smeared you and the PPC party. So he's responding to um, Maxime Bernier. I respect you, Max, but under your leadership, the PPC has not achieved much aside from removing strong conservative libertarian voice from the CPC. So it sounds like what he's saying here is this is going to amplify the mainstream narrative that's going to push more people towards Mark Carney. That what Maxime Bernier is pushing here is not going to defend the majority of Canadians. That's what he says there. But we know that the younger demographic is very much in support of the Conservative Party. Why would the younger demographic be supportive of the Conservative Party? Don't you care about gay rights? Said your liberal aunt. Don't you care about gay rights and the trans? I thought you guys were all up in that. I thought you guys were so hip about that. Now you want to go and vote for the Conservatives? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Elbows up. So, Global News says Pierre Poilievre's youth meet the young voters supporting the Conservatives. And they said 30 years ago, a mantra for the U.S. Democrats ran, "It's the economy, stupid." 3 decades later, that same energy has been captured by a Canadian politician that nobody would mistaken for Bill Clinton. The millennial and Gen Y Canadians who will vote for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, potentially for the first time or for the first time voting for the Conservatives, are angry. They're angry about the cost of living. They're angry about housing. And they're angry that the quality of life is likely to be worse than the boomer or Generation X parents. Which is exactly what someone like me, because I'm in that demographic, I'm a millennial, is also trying to tell people that, hey, you could say what you want about gay rights. You could say what you want about the LGBTQ and the trans and civil rights and black people and brown people and indigenous rights. You could say all you want about that, but that is minuscule to the overall economy that affects everybody. Everybody in this nation gets affected by the economy. So why are we scaring ourselves away from talking about real crises that are affecting everybody to focus on virtue signaling wokeism? Well, that's done purposely to divide people, to separate and divide people so that no one can come together on the important issues like the economy. But luckily, younger generations are at least willing to amplify that. They're willing to come together and amplify the fact that let's put all this madness aside, come together and focus on, hey, cost of living is making it unaffordable. And considering there's going to be a lot more boomers and a lot more Gen Xers that are going to retire, and us young people are going to have to save this country, it's not looking good. And that's why they're frustrated. That's why there's such a great divide, sadly, in this nation. March 10th numbers from Abacus data put the Conservatives ahead among 18 to 29-year-olds with 36% support, 27% for the NDP, and just 19% for the Trudeau Liberals. Abacus numbers for the 30 to 44-year-old set, the elder millennials and young Gen Xers are even more stark, with the Conservatives enjoying 43% to the Liberals 23%. The trend line among younger voters mirrors the overall gravitation to the Conservatives in national polling. But anecdotally, you could see it at Poilievre's rallies. The crowd skew younger than the people who turned out for the events under previous Conservative leaders Stephen Harper, Andrew Scheer, and Aaron O'Toole. So think of that. Think of that. That somehow Pierre Poilievre is winning a lot more younger demographics than previous Conservative leaders. Think about that. Maybe it's because Pierre Poilievre has a little bit something extra that no other Canadian politician is willing to actually express. No one's willing to actually look into the fentanyl crisis. Like I said, Pierre Poilievre, I don't know if he's serious or not about it, but I like the fact that he's addressing that we need to bring back rehabilitation. I like that policy. I agree with that policy. And I wish more and more people would speak about that. But considering it comes from Pierre Poilievre, I'm going to support that measure. Global News has reached out to more than 60 conservative riding associations across the country, meaning to meet first-time conservative voters who are drawn to Poilievre's message. The intent was to understand what is attracting young voters to the Conservative Party, not traditionally a home for young Canadians, but in the year and a half since Poilievre's leadership victory has become a vehicle for the rejection of the status quo. Think again, you just answer your own question there. Cost of living, unaffordable housing market, uh, not having adequate wages to meet the needs. You know, this just complete dismay and just complete neglect of the economic prosperity of this nation has done an absolute decimate to this generation and future generations. That's why a lot of younger people, and also younger people, are not watching global news. They're not watching CBC. They're not drawn in the propaganda. They're watching alternative media. They're fact checking. They're looking at podcast to podcast. They're searching on the web. They're able to fact check more. It's not like your older grandparents that used to watch the 6 o'clock news, and whatever was on the 6 o'clock news, that's it. Whatever they said, that was the news. Because younger people have cell phones. They go on the internet. They go through social media. They go to Joe Rogan. They go to Jasmine Lane. They go to Anita Krishna. They go to other podcasters to ration out and think for each other. They go to my show here. They go to unlimited sources to fact check. And they're realizing that the status quo has lied to them, manipulated people, and they are trying to salvage something for the future. They're trying to salvage something so that they can survive the next term. And it doesn't seem to look that way with another liberal term. That's why they're gliding towards Pierre Poilievre or even the People's Party. Not because they're automatically, they're all so right-wing and there must be bigots now. Young people are against the gay people, I guess, now. No, that's not the case. It's because the fact that we've been lied to, we've been decepted into this false narrative that is destroying the country, that's destroying the economic balance and the prosperity of this nation. This nation that used to be a welcoming center, that used to be prosperous, that anyone could survive the Canadian dream. Anyone that worked hard, was able to pay their dues, was welcomed as a Canadian, and had a prosperous future. That is no longer the case, and that's why more and more younger people are siding towards Poilievre and even the People's Party, which is two major threats to the establishment. That's why they're doing this tactic of having 90 candidates in one riding. It's just an absolute joke.